Hey guys, it's Rishi once again. Thank you very much for joining us for yet another video where today we'll be going through parallel and perpendicular lines. So what are parallel and perpendicular lines? Well, the first thing we need to understand is that parallel lines are a fixed distance apart and they will never meet. No matter how long they are extended, they will always be a certain distance apart. And graphs that are parallel will always have the same gradient. Now, if you've seen our video that we posted last week around the gradient of a line, then you're in the right place. But if you haven't, please go ahead and watch that video now. Click the link on the screen and then you may return. And with that, you'll have a better understanding of the gradient and now parallel and perpendicular lines. So, as we spoke about gradients in the last video, if I give you across two equations here, one which is y equals 2x plus 1 and one which is y equals 2x minus 2. Now they both have the same gradient, which is 2. So that means these graphs are parallel. So one thing to note here is that two graphs will be parallel if they have the same gradient. Let's give you an example. Let's name a graph that is parallel to y equals 3x plus 7. Now to be parallel, two graphs must have the same gradient. So we know that this gradient is 3 for this particular graph. So let's give another parallel line for this. So we'll have y equals 3x plus 2. So again, as the gradient is the same, this is also parallel. Or we could even go with y equals 3x plus 11. And that again is also parallel because the gradient is the same. So this is on the basis of having a parallel line. But let's now focus on a perpendicular line. So two lines are perpendicular if its product is minus 1. And that's the product of the gradient. So to find the equation of a perpendicular line, first find the gradient of the line and then use this to find the equation. So let's go for an example. Let's say they've given us a question to find the gradient of a line that is perpendicular to y equals 2x plus 1. Well, the first thing we know that 2 is the gradient. And the rule here is that we need to find a number which will multiply with 2 to give minus 1. And you know that this is a negative reciprocal of the gradient. And again, what does reciprocal mean? Well, the reciprocal of a number is 1 divided by that number. So again, if we have the reciprocal of 2, it's going to be 1 over 2. So the negative reciprocal of 2 is minus 1 over 2. And that's a negative. So please remember here that we need to find the negative reciprocal because we need to get minus 1. So this gives us y equals minus a half x plus 5. And that's just an example, right, of another line that is perpendicular. But for this particular question, it would be a plus 1, and that is your answer to find another line that is perpendicular. Again, we can put anything in this position, such as plus 5 as I did, or even plus 3.5. The main thing is that you have two numbers that multiply to make minus 1, where we take the first gradient, which is 2, we multiply this by a half, which then gives us minus 1, and that works really well for us. So I hope that introduction was clear. Let's now go ahead and jump into these set of questions. So question number 1. Let's write down the equation of a line parallel to y equals 3x plus 2. So step 1, we see that it's parallel, which means the gradient must be the same, so we'll have y equals 3x. And then, for for our y-intercept, that can be anything. So we can have plus 3 and it's going to be absolutely fine. As long as the gradient is the same, we are good to go. Beautiful. Okay, question number 2. Write down the equation of the line parallel to y equals a half x plus 5. So once again, we're going to go ahead and find out that our gradient has to be the same. So we will have y equals a half x. And because they're now giving us a set of coordinates, which is again 0, 2, we now know that the y is our intercept. So now we can have plus 2. So just to give you a bit of a breakdown here, our formula is y equals mx plus c, where m is our gradient and c is our y-intercept. And because we know that in this specific example, they've given us coordinates such as 0, 2, and 2 is our y-intercept, we now substitute it and we have y equals a half x plus 2. Okay, let's move over to question 3. So again, we've now seen that they want a parallel line, so we know our gradient must be the same. So we'll have y equals minus x, but then they've also given us a y coordinate, which is our y-intercept. So we'll have minus x minus 4, and we are good to go. So that's your two-step method there. Okay, let's move over to question 4, 5, and 6. I want to chuck you in the deep end now here. So pause the video, attempt this question, following the rules that I've stated, and then feel free to press play when you're ready. Okay, let's go through this. So question 4 states, write down the equation of a line perpendicular to y equals 3x plus 3. So this is now perpendicular. So we need two numbers that multiply to make minus 1, where they've given one already. So we know our gradient is 3. So 3 times something must equal minus 1. We know it has to be a reciprocal and it has to be negative to get a minus 1. So we now know it's going to be minus 1 over 3. So now we know that that is our gradient. So we can simply write down y equals minus 1 over 3x, and our y-intercept can be anything. So we'll just put plus 2. And it can be anything because they haven't defined their y-intercept. Okay, question number 5. So again, we need to find out a perpendicular line to y equals half x minus 4, and we now have been given coordinates. So we instantly know that 7 is going to be our y-intercept, so we'll have plus 7 from this section here. And we now know that we need to have a half multiplied by something which equals minus 1. So we know our reciprocal of a half is 2, but it has to be a negative reciprocal, so it's a minus 2, which means we now have y equals minus 2x plus 7. So I hope that was clear. Let's now move into question 6. Write down the equation of the line perpendicular to y equals minus 3 over 2x minus 1. Again, we know our y-intercept is minus 8, so I'll have minus 8 here. We then know we now need to find out our gradient. So we'll have minus 3 over 2 multiplied by something equals minus 1. So you know that a reciprocal is 1 over that number. But when we're faced with a fraction, all we need to do is flip that fraction. So we now have 2 over 3. And this time we don't need to put a negative, because a negative and a positive gives us a negative. So negative times positive equals negative, and that's what we want. So now our answer will be 2 over 3x minus 8. And there we are. I hope you're getting the hang of this, but if you're not, it's absolutely fine. I hope you're getting a hang of this, but if you still want to recap certain areas, feel free to rewind, watch the video from the scratch, and then press play to go through all the different situations. I hope you're getting a hang of this topic. Please remember that you do need to keep up the momentum and be consistent, which means you may need to watch this video again and go through the steps. Make sure you write down these rules so you know what formula to apply at which question. But without further ado, let's move over to question 7. So now we need to find the equation of the line parallel to 2y minus 3x plus 2 equals 0. And they've also given us a set of coordinates where the line passes through. So please remember, we always need to put in our answer in the form y equals mx plus c. So let's go ahead and write this equation in the form of y equals mx plus c. So again, we'll have 2y equals, we'll take the 3x over, so it's a positive 3x, and then the plus 2 becomes a negative 2. We'll then go ahead and divide this all by 2. So we have y equals 3 over 2x minus 1. And so now we know that our gradient is 3 over 2. We know that it passes through the coordinates 0, 4. So we can write y equals 3 over 2x plus 4. And there we are. Marvellous. So let me recap the steps that I've taken here. Step number 1, I've written down my equation in the form of y equals mx plus c. And what I've done is I've taken the negative 3 over to become a positive 3 and the plus 2 over to become a negative 2. I've then gone ahead and divided everything by 2 here. And that gives me y equals 3 over 2x minus 1 in the form of y equals mx plus c. And then I've written it down as my answer. Marvellous. Let's go over question 8. So again, find the equation of the line that is parallel to 2x plus 5 minus 10, and it passes through 0 minus 3. So once again, let's go ahead and write this equation down in the form of y equals mx plus c. So again, I'll take the 2x over, so we have 5y equals 10 minus 2x, so it will be 5y equals minus 2x plus 10. We will then divide everything by 5, so we have y equals minus 2 over 5x plus 2. So now we know our gradient is minus 2 over 5. So for that reason, we have 5 equals minus 2 over 5. We bring the minus 3 down here. And that is our answer. And that is again in the form of y equals mx plus c. Okay, let's move over to question 9. So for question 9, they're now asking us to find the equation of the line perpendicular. So again, we need to make sure that the product of our gradients is equal to minus 1. So again, I'll go ahead and divide everything by 5 here. So we're left with 5 equals 2 over 5x minus 4 over 5. We know 2 over 5 is our gradient. So we'll have 2 over 5 multiplied by the negative reciprocal to get minus 1. We know it's a negative, so we put the negative sign and we flip the fraction. So it's 5 over 2. And we can then write that out. Y equals negative 5 over 2x plus 7. And there we are. Now feel free to pause the video at any given time. Attempt the question and then press play. You won't get the hang of this in the first go. You don't want to rush the process. So keep it consistent and go through this topic once more. You're doing really well by coming this far, so let's keep it up. Okay, let's move over to question 10. So here are the equations of 5 straight lines. And 2 of these lines are parallel. So we need to find which 2 lines are parallel. So what rules do you remember here in terms of parallel lines? Well, the first rule I remember is that the gradient must be the same. But it's a little bit tricky, right? Because they don't all equal to y. Some equal to 2y, 4y, or even 3y. So let's go ahead and make this the same. So for line A, we know the gradient equals 2. For line B, let's go ahead and divide everything by 2. So we have y equals a half x plus 3 over 2. So again, our gradient for this is a half. We'll then do the same for line C. So we'll have y equals 3 over 4x minus a half. So we now know our gradient is 3 over 4. So again, that's not the same so far. Let's go with line D. We now know that is y equals 2x minus a half. So again, we know our gradient is equal to 2. And then we don't need to do C because we now know that the gradient of A and D are exactly the same, where we have 2 and 2. And again, all I've done is simply make sure that I've made y the subject to get my answer. So it's A and D, and there we are. I hope that was clear. Let's now move into question 11. And now this time we need to work out which two lines are perpendicular. So please remember that the product of the two gradients must equal -1. I'll pause the video here, go ahead and attempt this, and then we'll go through it together. Okay, let's go through this. So let's take a look at line A here. We know we need to make y the subject. So we'll have y equals -3x. We'll take the 3x over, plus 4, which means our gradient is equal to -3. For line B, we'll then have y equals a half x plus a half. And that is again because we are dividing everything by 2, so we know our gradient is a half. Then we have line C. So with line C, we'll have y equals -2x plus 3. So our gradient is equal to -2. And now remember here, two of these lines must be perpendicular. Let's go ahead and check to see if any of them are the same. I'm slightly skeptical on line B and C, and that is because we have a half times by -2, which does in fact give us -1. And again, if you want to double check that, we can simply have 1 over 2 times -2 over 1, where we have 1 times -2 is -2, and 2 times 1 is 2. And if we divide that, we do get -1. And there we are. So we now know here that lines B and C are perpendicular because the product of the gradients are -1. Amazing work. I hope you can now see the steps that I'm taking here. So try to understand exactly what I'm doing and how I'm making y the subject. Again, if you are still confused, feel free to comment below or send me an email and I'll be more than happy to help you out. I hope this video has been clear so far. We've got a few more questions left, so let's keep pushing. Question 12. Line A passes through the points 2, 1 and 5, 10. So let's find the equation of the line parallel to A that passes through 2, 5. So again, if you haven't seen our gradient of a line video, please go ahead and watch that. But let's go ahead and jump into this right away. So we have our gradient, which is m equals the difference of y over the difference of x. So let's go ahead and write this out, which is then going to be 10 minus 1 over 5 minus 2, which is 9 over 3, which gives us 3 as our gradient. We now need to find what is parallel to this. So remember, our gradient must be the same. So we now have y equals 3x plus c. And from the coordinates that they've given us, we now know that our y is going to be 5. So we have 5 equals 3x plus c, where our x is 2. So 5 equals 3 times 2 plus c. So that there gives us 5 equals 6 plus c. But if we now make c the subject, we'll have 5 minus 6 equals c, and that is minus 1. And there we are. We now know that c equals minus 1. So all we need to write in terms of our equation is now y equals 3x minus 1. And there we are. So once again, what have I done? I've gone ahead and found the gradient, which is 3. I've then substituted my y and my x, which was 5 and 2, and then made c the subject to get my answer. I hope that was clear. Let's now move over into question 13. So now for question 13, they're asking us to find an equation for a line that is perpendicular to A. So once again, remember, both gradients product must be minus 1. So straight away, let's go ahead and find the difference of our y over x. So we'll have 7 take away 5 over 5 take away 1, which is 2 over 4, and that gives us a half. So now we know that our gradient is a half, but if we need to find a perpendicular gradient, we know it's going to be the reciprocal, which actually will be the negative reciprocal. So perpendicular will be minus 2. And that's because minus 2 times a half is minus 1. We've now gone ahead and done that. So that's our step 1 done. So now let's go ahead and substitute this into our equation, which is y equals minus 2x, as that is our perpendicular, plus c. We know they've given us a pair of coordinates, which is minus 1 and 7, which is your x and y. So we can go ahead and substitute this right away. So now we will have 7 equals minus 2 minus 1 plus c, which is 7 equals 2 plus c. And we know 2 plus 5 is 7, so that means c equals 5. And that being said, we can now write that down as y equals minus 2x plus 5. So I hope that was clear. Keep up the great work. Let's now move into the next set of questions. Question 14. So again, we're working with parallel lines here. So let's do the exact same thing, where we have 10 minus 1 and 4 minus minus 2. And that gives us 9 over 6, which is 3 over 2 simplified. So we now know that our gradient must be y equals 3 over 2x. So if I write that down, y equals 3 over 2x. And now we need to find our c, which is our y-intercept. So now we've gone ahead and done that. Let's go ahead and find c. So y equals 3 over 2x plus c. Remember, we've been given these coordinates, which is 2, 7 as our x and our y. So now we need to substitute that. So let's go ahead and do that right away. So again, 3 plus something equals 7, and we know c equals 4, and that's what we will be writing here. Plus 4, and we are good to go. So again, let's pause here, take a look at the question, and I hope things are clear for you now. Marvellous. And this now brings us to our last question, question 15. So in this question, we're now focusing on finding an equation for the line that is perpendicular. So once again, remember the product of the two gradients must equal minus 1. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. We have minus 1 take away minus 5 over 10 minus 2. And that gives us 4 over 8, or a half. That's our gradient. But if we get our perpendicular gradient, that will give us minus 2. So now we know we're working with y equals minus 2x plus c, but we have our x and our y, which is 4 and 3. So let's go ahead and substitute this. So we'll have 3 equals minus 2, 4 plus c, where we'll have 3 equals minus 8 plus c, and then we know minus 8 plus something gives us 3, and that's going to be 11. So now we know we'll have our answer written out, which is going to be y equals minus 2x plus 11. And there we are. That there brings us to the end of our video. I hope that was clear, and I hope you have now got a clear understanding of how the gradient is the same all along the line, especially when you're working with the parallel lines. Remember, the y-intercept was 11 because the line crosses the y-axis at 11 as our y-intercept. You guys have come really far by going through these questions. Once again, don't forget to go over these questions again until you feel confident. If there is any advice or any comments that you would like to share, please go ahead and comment below in the video so I can then adjust my teaching to your understanding. Well, with that in mind, keep up the great work, and I'll see you in the next video.